Hello everyone, my name is Spencer Bailey and my topic expansion is on listening in the workplace. The articles and textbooks that I draw from are from our textbook, Communicating at Work, 12th edition by Adler, Mrischfuer, Elmhurst, and Lucas, Communication, Active Listening at Work by Deborah and Taya Tong, and a factor analysis of barriers to effective listening by Stephen Golan. So why does listening matter? According to our textbook, Adler et al. States that in numerous studies, listening has proved to be the most important communication skill throughout one's career in terms of job and career success, productivity, upward mobility, and organizational effectiveness. The book also states that career consultant Andrea Sutcliffe says, if you had to choose one interpersonal skill to work on in your first year of the job, pick listening. It will be the single most important tool you will have for getting along and getting ahead. In Deborah and Taya Tong's article, Communication, Active Listening at Work, she talks about this directly. She talks about working in hospitals and how nurses tend to feel disconnected from each other because of the lack of confidence to ask for help or share concerns with colleagues. This in turn reduces staff confidence and teamwork, and it can be relieved through effective communication, which she states begins with the way we perceive our emotional selves, which governs how we interact with others. And this entire process begins with the age-old concept of active listening. Now, active listening isn't all that easy it sounds. As we know from our textbooks, one of the faulty assumptions of listening is that it's a natural ability. There are three main barriers to effective listening. The first being environmental barriers, which according to Adler et al. Are things such as background noise, conversational buzz, incoming phone calls, and a number of environmental sounds can hinder our ability to listen. Here is an example.
Hey, is there any way you could send those documents to me?
What was that?
The documents for the meeting?
Sorry, what?
I need you to send the documents for the meeting!
What? The second kind of barrier is physiological barriers. Adler et al. Describes them as things such as temporary and permanent issues with our body, such as hearing loss, earaches, and headaches, that can impact our ability to listen. Here's an example.
Hey, is there any way you could send me those documents? The company, they might cut our finance, you know. I don't want to go out of business. This is a serious thing.
What?
I gotta get those documents into them, okay? We gotta get this done. Are you listening?
The third and most prevalent barrier are psychological barriers. Adler et al. Mentioned things such as preoccupation, message overload, egocentrism, ethnocentrism, and the fear of appearing ignorant as psychological barriers. In Stephen Golan's article, A Factor Analysis of Barriers to Effective Listening, he did a study that wanted to determine which barriers are perceived to be most frequently encountered that may affect listening effectiveness among business college students. Of the 10 most frequently experienced barriers, 5 were identified to be the most prevalent. These 5 barriers were lack of interest, daydreaming, distractions, concentrating on speakers' mannerisms, and detouring. Of the most prevalent factor that caused these barriers was the laziness factor. This showed that students tended to avoid listening because of the complexity of the subject and the time required to listen effectively. Here is an example of a psychological barrier.
Hey, is there any way you could send those documents to me?
Man, I wonder what I'm gonna bring to that party later. It's gonna be great.
The documents? gotta get those documents into them, okay? We gotta get this done. Are you listening?
Although we may find ourselves daydreaming and thinking about other things, another huge psychological barrier is the fear of appearing ignorant. Kathy Savitt, who is Chief Marketing Officer and Head of Global Media at Yahoo, and also the CEO and founder of Lockers, which is a social commerce company, talks about listening and the fear of appearing ignorant.
Which you have to do every day. You're on like a pitch, right? When you have a new idea or a startup, sit down and listen. So the best way of doing it is to sit in a meeting with, if you're a marketer, sit in your engineering meeting. If you're an engineer, sit in your meeting with the people that are doing finance or marketing, and just listen, and say, hey, I feel really out of my league. Make me smarter. What's the one thing I need to know? And don't be afraid to ask really stupid questions. Like, stupid questions are never stupid. There are lots of times when sort of that naive question comes in where someone looks really embarrassed and they say, I don't know why we're doing that. And that's a great moment.
So, how do we listen more effectively? In our textbook, Adler et al. Talk about mindful versus mindless listening, which mindless listening is when we react to others' messages automatically and routinely, versus mindful listening, where we give careful and thoughtful attention and responses to the messages we receive. Secondly, listening to understand by withholding judgment, talking and interrupting less, asking questions, paraphrasing, and taking notes. And lastly, listening to evaluate by analyzing the speaker's evidence and examining their emotional appeals. Here are my sources, and thank you for listening.